The recording started.
Thank you.
I'm making you host.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. No.
But I still can't share my content. Arun, I still can't share the content.
Sir, go to participant option, assign privilege. Select your ID to you. Go to the nursing and assign sharing content.
नहीं यार, मैं मेरा मैक तो खो रहा था.
Again, I have to make you presenter. Sir, now you are presenter.
Thank you. So will we some time waiting for the people to join in.
Sure.
We're waiting for some people to join in. So in a couple of minutes. Thank you so much for all those who have joined in time. May I request your patience for a little while for the rest of the participants, attendees to join. Thank you so much. I would request all attendees to keep their mics on mute, please. Request all attendees to keep their mics on mute. Are we ready? Good morning. Hope you all are keeping good health and welcome to Friday Phone Home with Entrepreneur. This is a series started by Propel, the incubator at BML Madras University. In this series, we invite entrepreneurs to interact with students aspiring to be an entrepreneur or have their own startup ventures soon. The platform that we have created provides an opportunity to these students to have an interaction with the successful entrepreneurs whom we invite from their so that they can really speak to them and learn from the experience, and also provide this platform also provide motivation to the aspiring entrepreneurs. Today's speaker is Akhil Suhag, who is the founder and CEO of FanFight. FanFight is the leading fantasy cricket, football, and kabaddi online platform. It has been one of the fastest growing online gaming platforms. It has reached 4 million user base in a very, very short period of time. The venture has had multiple rounds of fundraising as well. So it's actually on way to be one of the leading startup success stories to come. Akhil, who started this venture, has two marks. First, he is an MBA from ISB, and second, he's also done Masters in International Business from Grenoble Equality Management. Prior to starting his ventures, he had also worked with Infosys Limited and Dell Group. You know, he has started a venture called Contreasy.com, and he is also credited to have built Ireland's biggest laundry startup. Akhil is also a TEDx speaker. Today, Akhil will be speaking to us about how to use the time at college to prepare for entrepreneurial journey. His talk will be for about 30 to 40 minutes. Post the talk, we will conduct a question and answer session. All the attendees are requested to post their queries and comments in the chat window. Before Akhil starts, I would also like to request you all to keep your mics on mute, please. This would be very helpful to make sure that the webinar goes nicely. We appreciate your understanding. Akhil, on behalf of BML Madras University and Propel Incubator at the BMU, it's my pleasure and privilege to welcome you to this session. Thank you so much for taking time out and with our students to share your journey and your thoughts with them. Over to you, Akhil.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. That paints me in a much better light than I probably deserve. I hope everyone is doing good and safe in these unprecedented times. I'll just share a small presentation, which is more to keep than for you guys. Let me know if you guys can see this.
It is visible. It's coming on. It's coming on. And just a couple of people. Yeah.
So,
Yes, it's visible.
someone really comes in and tells me he wants to be an entrepreneur, it's my first question is why? Because it's not a very logical career to pursue as such. We've romanticized entrepreneurship a lot, and I'm told if you are not doing this, you wasting away your life and stuff like that, which I really don't believe in. I think the core of everything is you should be happy about where you are. You should be satisfied with what you're doing in your life, and that is what it is about, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to feel good about yourself when you go back. So it's a very hard role to pursue, which is also because as an entrepreneur, you can't really talk to too many people about your problems. It's a very takes a very emotional toll on you, because it's your baby, right? How many people go out and discuss things about their own children. You can't talk to your employees because you need to keep them motivated. You can't talk to your investors because, well, you need to take your next round of funding from them. So there are very few people you'll be able to discuss your problems with. Even at home, you'll find it, unless you're super lucky, you'll find it very difficult because you want to give the surety to your family that you're okay. Otherwise, it becomes difficult for them as well. So, very lonely, right? And the problem at the end of the lonely ride is it's a lot of hard work, a lot of emotional toll, a lot of just crazy nights, and there might be no upside in the end. The 9 by 10 rule is more around approximately 9 out of 10 startups fail. So after putting in all of it, after putting in a couple of years, you might end up with absolutely nothing. And you have to be consciously aware that that is, in most cases, the outcome that might come out. So you need to be prepared that it's okay in case that happens. So pick entrepreneurship not because your friends think it's cool, because you think that's what the in thing is right now. If money drives you, I don't think uh, this is the right path. Again, you can do much better and be much more stable in a career if you're doing well in your job. Uh, Sundar Pichai is making enough money. As an entrepreneur, I don't think I will make the amount of money he is. So there are much better ways that you end up making money. If money is driving you, the truth of the matter is, I don't know how many of you actually, a lot of grown-ups also, I'm surprised that not really, they don't really know how does an entrepreneur really make money. For a lot of people I've met, they think every time I raise, that is money coming to my pocket, which is not the case. The truth is, when you raise money, the investor puts a cap on your salary. He says you can pay yourself only this much. So the only way an entrepreneur really makes money is either your salary that you have, or if you're generating profits, which for the first 2-3 years is almost close to impossible. Then it's the dividends that you take, or if you're selling your stake, which is also at least 4-5 years down the line. So if you're looking at money, it's very, very difficult. You will have 3 years of living in abject poverty, actually, which is the truth. Even if you look at myself, I started at ISB. I had a pretty big education loan on my head, and my investors said I can take home 60K, and my loan itself was 30K a month. So find what drives you to get into entrepreneurship. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult. You won't be able to stick to it otherwise. What drove me was trying to prove myself that I can build something. And my initial goal was just, can I provide livelihood to 2 people? And then your goals sort of shift from there. You can't directly have a goal of, I'll build a $1 billion company. Otherwise, you'll be too disappointed too early to actually follow through with it. So take it step by step. It's a very hard journey. It's like anything hard, right? Even for that matter, if you look at someone working on fitness, only over the course of time, over a year or 2 years, and improve every day, rather than saying I'll be a Superman tomorrow. So it's sort of anything difficult in life that will take time, that will require a lot of energy, and the only sad part being at the end of it, you might end up with nothing at all. So yeah, I'm sorry the point is not to discourage you. The point is a lot of people get into it because of peer pressure without knowing what the challenges might be. And I think you should know what you're getting into before you start. Now, once you've taken the decision that this is the road you want to take and you're still in college, you really do about it. Now, most of my perspectives are from a tech uh, business perspective, a tech scalable, high growth business, which is what the VC scene dominates and stuff, and not a brick and mortar business, which might be very different to operate from these. As far as a tech scalable venture is concerned, you need three core things: a network, you need someone who can build your technology, and you need money. A distant fourth would be business sense, which is basically a lot of common sense, and that can be acquired on the side. So, as a founder, you would want to have one of these three things with you. So, if you are the tech guy, you can find someone with money or network and get them to be a co-founder. Which is also, when I said there are not too many people that you can talk to as an entrepreneur. Probably the only person that you can is your co-founder. And selecting a co-founder becomes absolutely necessary. And that is one of the places, college is one of the best places to find one. Because the relationships you build, especially during undergrad, remain generally for life. And you probably want to find a co-founder who although shares the vision that you do, but you get affected by different sort of problems. In the sense, if you're both down at the same time, then you're helping no one. So someone who looks at problems differently. So if one problem is big for you, it might not be for him. And so he can pick you up when you need picking up, and you can do the other way around. Now, speaking to people in colleges and also sort of some mistakes that I've made, I've just put in a couple of key things in there. The first thing is what I call the Zuckerberg fallacy, where media tends to put these stories in front of us that he dropped out from college, Bill Gates dropped out from college, and they build billion-dollar companies, which we tend to misinterpret in a lot of ways. There are two things. College can be viewed as a place to go get a degree, and secondly, a place to get your learning. If you view college as a degree taking place, then yes, you don't need to go to college. The truth about Zuckerberg and Bill Gates was one, they dropped out from Harvard. They didn't drop out from random school. So they did make it to Harvard, which is decent. The second thing is a lot of learning for them happened even before they got to Harvard. Zuckerberg sold a game to Microsoft when he was 15 or something. So from a learning perspective, Zuckerberg did not really need college. And in that regards, if you have learned that much, if you know that much, that is a completely different thing. Then I have also had people who come and say, I don't really need to work hard. Anyways, I'll build a business. What are you doing today that will affect your success while you start the business? It becomes a lot more. If you're just using it as a reason to not learn anything, I understand you might be doing BTech, you're not interested, but if you want to build a business, is there anything else that you're spending time on to build those skills? And this is very much connected to the I have an idea as well. I have $1 billion idea. I'll be frank, I get an idea every day, and it does not matter at all that you have an idea. There is absolutely no value of just an idea, which brings me to signaling. because finally you want to raise funds, you want to do a couple of other things just to bring that idea to fruition, right? Signaling is something they teach in business schools a lot as well, from a completely different perspective. Signaling is why an IIT, the IITs dominate our startup scenes, the IITs, IIMs, and the rest of the premier colleges. It is basically getting through an IIT is a signal that I can work over a decently long period of time towards one concentrated goal. So the moment you get into an IIT, you basically signal that I can work over a 2-year period to crack this exam, which shows determination and not giving up. And IITian is in no ways more intelligent than you. He's had pretty much the same genetic material as every one of us. The only thing is they work hard. So, and getting into an IIT signals determination and hard work. That is all they are signaling. What it also brings is a network. It becomes considerably easier because if your batchmate has joined Sequoia and you are starting up, the doors open easier, right? So, how do you bring signaling and network in the positions that you are in currently? Is what you can do about it. Can you start? So, if you look at tech people, can the tech guys start working better on the hacker ranks and stuff of the world where they can show, they can signal that I am a good techie? Right. As far as tech is concerned, it's a much lighter battle than for the non-tech people. Tech guys, the only issue with tech people I see, younger ones, is that the challenges for tech is not that you've made a website or an app look and function the way that it is right now. The challenge is scale. The challenge is when you have 1,000 concurrent users, 10,000 concurrent users, and are you preparing for that right now? If you look at the interview processes of any Google or Facebook, they're not looking to hire people who can solve the problem. They're looking to hire people who can solve the problem in the most efficient way. And for a startup as well, that becomes very important because you can grow at a very fast pace. So do you know how to handle scale, which is your design and analysis of algorithms, the complexity of algorithms and stuff, which the tech guys in this room would probably know. So how much time are you spending on that? On solving problems in a more efficient way? And for me also personally, that has been one of the biggest tech challenges we have. If you look at it logically also for a Google, its two main costs would be salary and servers, right? So where does it cut costs? Not really on salary because you want the best talent out there to work for you. But the next place you cut costs is can you make everything more efficient to run on a server? Finally, you don't want something that requires 100 servers for 1,000 people. So that is what it is. For tech, for non-tech guys, the first thing is make good tech friends, which is very, very important, especially in college. Because again, as I said, the relationships you form there last. So make good tech friends and just read and read a lot. I see a lot of non-tech guys who think they know business because they're like, this is an idea, this is an idea. Are very afraid to get into the nitty-gritties of it, which is, are you networking right now? Hopefully, with your incubator and stuff in place, you'll have more talks. You'll get to meet VCs, see their opinions. Can you network with them a little more? From a simple study perspectives, do you know your basics of financial accounting, your managerial accounting? The non-tech startup guy has to be a mix of a corporate lawyer, because you need to understand your term sheets. You need to understand your just the clauses in your when you raise money, because you can't go out to anyone initially. It saves a lot of time. It gives you what to look for in a contract. So you a bit of contract law, a bit of investment banking. How do you value your startups? On what basis am I asking for this valuation? How do valuations work? And finally, a bit of a person who can run a company. So there's plenty to do, even if you want to be a non-tech startup founder, which you can actually sit down and do in college, which I see very little people do because they don't think all of this really adds to anything. People are just happy to generate ideas, which is, you're not really getting any skills out of that, which is just sitting down and brainstorming session. So an idea is okay, but are you building on top of that? I don't know how many of you who know what Y Combinator is, just as an example, which is a very big red flag if you want to start up. Y Combinator is the biggest accelerator in the world right now. And even less number of you would know that Y Combinator runs a 12-hour course at Stanford, which is how to start a startup, which is freely available on YouTube. And it's the amount of information you get there is absolutely amazing. But the fact that not many of you would have found it or went and saw it, and if you have, it's absolutely wonderful. That is a red flag to me, that you have not done that. You have really not immersed yourself in that. I want entrepreneurship as a career. You're just there. You're just giving yourself reasons not to do other stuff because you're coming up with ideas every day. And that is what it is. Now, college might be the right time to start, might not be the right time to start, depending on a lot of consequences, which we'll probably talk later. But if you can, especially for me as an MBA student, I thought it would be right because it gave me a year where no one would ask me, why am I not working, or why don't I have a job? So it took that pressure off of me. My entire goal was, can I raise while I'm still a student, so that then I can pay myself a little bit of salary. So it becomes easier to explain. So in that regards, it really worked for me, even though I had a education loan and stuff. But that is how I looked at it. Also, we as a society are structured in a way that you have to hit milestones according to your age, which makes it better if you start early, but it sort of narrows your scope a whole lot. In the sense, you can't start a B2B company right out of college. You can, but it's very, very difficult, because unless you worked somewhere, you don't know what problem to solve for a B2B business. B2B being selling to a business to business company. So that narrows you down. The number of problems that you've faced in life that you would want to solve for are very narrow. So that narrows you down. And just general experience narrows you down. It's funny that although all the young entrepreneurs are celebrated in the media, and it looks like it's only 22, 23-year-olds who are building companies. But if you look at unicorns and numbers, more unicorns, companies valued above 1 billion are made by people above 40, than above 35, 40, than are by people who are under 25, which is just another stat that you should reflect on, which tells you it's, in case it does not work out now, not the end of the world. There's a very long life ahead of you. And yeah, that's how it works. Now, if you get deeper into business models and stuff, there's the easy way to look at it where you have your B2Bs and B2Cs, which is business to consumer and business to business. But if you drill down a little more, there are basically three ways that you're going to build your business. There might be more, but broadly, you can sort of classify it into this. You can either bundle, which is like, why do you need three apps for this? I'll make one app that does all of these three things. Or you can unbundle, where I'll give you an example like, or can I see the chat if I can ask a question? No. So Facebook was unbundled into WhatsApp.
If you want, okay, if you want, you can put in the chat. If you want, I can use the chat on your behalf.
I've let it out, so that's fine. So unbundling does not get as much attention, but it's actually brilliant. So Facebook was basically unbundled into WhatsApp and Instagram, which is basically saying, instead of doing these 5 things, I'll do this one thing that I'll do better than anyone else. So you could chat on Facebook, you could share photos on Facebook, and you could do a whole lot of other things. WhatsApp said, I'll just take chat and make it work better than them. Instagram said, let's just take photos. If you look at Flipkart and Amazon as well, so Nykaa is an unbundle of Amazon, right? You could buy a lot of stuff on Amazon, even cosmetics. Then Nykaa took a part of it. Baby OA is an unbundle of Flipkart or Amazon, where I'll just focus on kid products. So unbundling is very underrated but very widely used. The only problem with unbundle is when you pitch it to people. If I want to build a website that sells only cosmetics, the first question you will hear back from even investors is, but I can buy it on Amazon, why do I need you? Right? Then how do you justify that unbundle becomes very important. That cosmetics requires a more holistic experience or whatever, that becomes very important. Even if you look at the banking sector in that regards, you have a bank that does everything from refinancing to loans to insurance to creating accounts, savings accounts, a lot of stuff. Now, every single branch of that is an unbundle and is a startup idea. So there are companies that are doing just insurance. There are companies that are doing, startups that are doing just loans. There are startups that are doing just refinancing. So banks were a huge business doing 10 things, and people have taken one small part from each one and started 10 companies out of it. Just trying to make all of those business lines a lot more efficient and easier for the user to use. In the case of bundle, when you bundle something, the big challenge becomes what is your core core value, not what is the core thing that you're going to market, right? It is very easy for an insurance company to market saying we are the best insurance company in the world. But if you're doing 3 things, which one do you market? How do you market? Your positioning becomes a challenge. It's not impossible to solve for. But yeah, that is a challenge. The third way you can start is you create something new. So it's not bundle or unbundle. It's usually you take an offline process online, which is, say, your Swiggies of the world or your urban class. You were going to a barber, they said, why not just bring it online? What you bring there is a lot of scale. So you inherently become the largest barber shop in the world. And what scale helps you do is, because you have so much of scale, you can work on commissions rather than having to set up barbershops. So it doesn't have to be an operating intensive taking offline to online. It could be as simple as what Khatabook is doing, where they've just taken the roadside vendors' khatas online. So it could be completely tech-based as well. So broadly, these are the three ways you can look at a business. Even B2B, you can look at it the same way. There's a lot of unbundling that is happening in B2B. There's also a lot of bundling. So an ERP is basically a bundle of a lot of stuff. An ERP is your payroll and your employee management, everything bundled into one. But you have unbundling of it where you have just payroll companies. So just payment companies, just accounting companies. So in the B2B space as well, there is a lot of bundle and unbundling that happens. What sticks with me throughout is pick a small market that would grow very quickly. This was not something I said. This is the founder of Airbnb. Why pick a small market? Because if the market is already big, you'll have a lot of competition, and competition kills startups. If you pick something small, while you're building it, not many people would be getting into it. And if it grows quickly, you grow with it. By the time you're big enough, then people start realizing it's a big market and come after you, but you'll be in a much better position to hold them off. So if you look at Airbnb, even if competition did come in, no one really caught up because they were, by the time people realized it's a great market, they were too big. The best place, you are the best place if you pick something small, but you really believe that will grow very quickly and you stick with it. Then if you look at further, if you delve deeper in a different direction, transaction-driven models are mostly around you pay for a service and you take the service. You pay for some stuff and you buy that stuff, so you get revenue straight up. Scale-driven models are more like Facebook, that you'll build a community, you'll build scale, and then you'll monetize that scale. There has been a little bit of mishmashing as well. So initially, if you just scale initially and then you start monetizing it, which is something akin to what Jio did. But generally, revenue first models tend to be more in the B2B space, because B2C, you would want to build scale first. B2B, you can go get your first contract. I have a friend who, before he started writing the first line of code, he was able to sell his product and get a contract off the ground, and use that money to actually build the product. The more and more the situation develops where you have COVID, which is hurting the economy a lot, the more and more revenue becomes important. And how do you make revenue? Where do you make revenue? How fast can you start generating revenue are questions that become more and more important. So again, do you want to be transaction driven, where you can say I'll start driving revenue from day one, or which I think is more logical right now than scale. But people can be absolutely wrong. I mean, LinkedIn was built in during the dot-com bubble, when the bubble burst. So, and LinkedIn is completely scale driven. In anything related to a startup, there is no rule. If I say something, someone would have done the exact opposite, but it's just the directions that you can take right now. And when it comes to ideas, it also becomes important how differently are you looking at certain things. Like if you look at the current situation, everyone knows it's a time. Gaming is taking off, work from home solutions are taking off, online education is taking off. But everyone knows that. So what is your different point of view? And when I say everyone knows that, is it translates to a lot of competition. You will have a lot of Zoom competitors, you will have a lot of gaming competitors. you'll have a lot of online education competitors. But people who have really won that market saw this 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, even 10 years back, which they didn't. The COVID situation, they saw behavioral changes that will make these things important way early than now. So if you are currently saying to yourself, yeah, gaming will be really great, you're not bringing anything new to the table. Everyone knows gaming will be great. Everyone knows working from home will be great. You'll have to do better than that. One of the ways is being counterintuitive in the sense that a lot of people think travel is dead. But if you think about it, maybe 2 years down the line, you'll have a lot of travel companies that have shut down. You'll have very less competition in travel, and it's not that people will stop traveling after 2 years, right? It's not that after the Spanish flu, travel stopped. The jet age happened after the Spanish flu. So, do you want to start working towards building in a space where there will be very less competition while everyone else goes into gaming and work from home? Can you go the opposite direction? It will take time, it will be difficult, but it will be a blank space where probably you can do something. Right? It's the same for brick and mortar as well. A lot of gyms will close, a lot of restaurants will close, but 2 years later, people will want all of that. It's not that they will not. Everyone gets vaccinated in 2-3 years. Everyone is okay with it, and all restaurants have shut down. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in spaces which people have completely given up on right now, which I am not saying lightly. It might not be an immediate opportunity, but it's a big opportunity. Now, I don't know where am I on time. I have really pushed on. I'm sorry. I'll try and finish off quickly.
You can have another 5 minutes. We can finish it.
A big question that comes to me usually is, what do investors look in when they're giving you money? Early on, it's just two things. One, do you believe it will be a big market in the future? If it's not right now, how scalable is this thing? Because for an investor, scale is everything. He wants to, at an early stage, he would want to 20x, 30x his money. So you need to grow that big. That is why a lot of big brick and mortar businesses are not VC fundable, because they're just not that scalable. Right? The other thing is team, and can the team execute? So again, this is where your signaling becomes very important. What have you done to tell them that you can execute? Is it a well-rounded team? Is there a tech guy? Is there someone who understands business? All that becomes very important. And just, can you execute? And the third is, do you know the market? What is your deep insight about the market? Where do you see it going? How do you see it going? You need to know your business and your market very well. All the questions are around this and nothing else. If these two things work, if you can show, how do you show you can execute? Have you built an MVP to show, yes, it works? There are multiple things that you can do just to show that you are decent enough to execute. And yeah, these two things, you take care of, that is all there is to it. Now, when to start? There is no right answer to that. Start whenever you feel works for you. But when I say that, don't keep delaying and finding reasons why not to start right now. A lot of people just don't do it. They find a new reason every time. They say, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur, it's just not the right time. If you get the right people to work with, start. And if you believe what you're doing decent enough, start. Otherwise, there's no point. It's a very fast-paced industry where something new comes in every day. So delaying does not make sense. If you've done your signaling, if you think you've managed the network, the money, and the tech, even if you've managed just 2 out of those, it's time to start. And when I say network, if you have an incubator in place, you know you can leverage that network. So you just have to worry about tech then. So it's different positions for everyone. I understand people have family to take care of, people have a lot of other things to take care of before they can. But in India, it just gets a little difficult the older you grow. Then you'll have to wait post 40 till you are in a secure enough position to start. So yeah, that's it. Thank you guys. I hope I have not bored you too much and it was a little helpful. I'll take any questions if any. That will be great.
Thank you, Akhil. Very interesting. I was making notes, and I've already got a page full of notes from your talk. Some of the things which stand out for me are things like, very critical. I think at the beginning when you said people need to really think hard. What is the reason to be an entrepreneur? They need to be very clear of that. I think that's a very good point to emphasize, especially for the aspiring entrepreneurs. And you had some very good thoughts on that. It's not about money per se, because if you're looking for money, then maybe job can give you a regular job, a good job may give you more secure money and more regular money. But if it is something that you want to do more substantial, create a value, I think that was one very good thing. And then other thing was that chase step up goals. Not, don't think you're going to make a 1 billion unicorn immediately when you're going to launch. You have many goals before you reach the goal of unicorn. I think these two really mean that when you start, be clear what you want, but at the same time go for small goals and go for that. I think that stood out. And then looking at today's situation, we said do things which others aren't doing. I think that's another thing about entrepreneurs, that they are not the sheep following the rest. They are the ones who create their own paths. And in fact, what you're saying is that be different from the others. And if travel or hospitality or any of those industry which is getting hit badly by COVID, people aren't looking at it. Probably that is the time to look at it.
Yeah.
And look. Yeah, and I think what you're also saying in this is that never an entrepreneur doesn't look at what is the current opportunity alone. I think what you're referring to is should the entrepreneur only look at current situation? Should he also look a little beyond the horizon and say what would really be happening as things change over a period of time? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, it has to be a couple of years before people see something. Otherwise, you're just, if current situation, anyone can assess the current situation, right? Is again, which brings in competition. So you'll have to be a year or two ahead to start something. And when Zoom I think started 2005-6. It's been quite a while where they said we'll do work from home better. And it was quite a vision at that point, right? It's not, no world threatening event happened or anything happened. It's just this accelerated the process of their vision, but it was a very long time back. If you today are saying I'll compete with them, it's very, very difficult. Even though there was a security patch issue with them, but they are in a much better place to solve that issue in a week than any one of us.
Now, catching up will also be challenging. But the question really is that how can somebody who's wanting to be an entrepreneur look beyond the horizon and see things which others can't see? How do you develop that? Is that an ability which you're born with, or is that an ability that you can develop?
No, I don't think you. I really don't think you're born with anything at all. It's. I really believe in you can. It's so a lot of reading and reading from the right sources. So you have a lot of very great entrepreneurs writing very nice blogs about what they see happening. So I'm not even saying I have a great vision. Even if you can't see in the future, find the right sources to talk to, find the right sources to. So you don't have to have anything in place. You might be just a very good executioner, but can you take care of your limitations by surrounding yourself with the right people, the right sort of what you're reading, what you're doing every day, how do you spend your time, That becomes crucial. So if you look at Y Combinator, they've put up a list of like 50 to 60 ideas. Okay, this is something we'll be wanting to invest in over the next 5 years because we see the future heading this way.
Right.
So it's out there if you're sort of looking for it.
Right. I think what you're saying is be observant.
A lot of things are also connected. Like Instagram was so connected to the travel boom in the young generation. That Instagram spurred people wanting to post pictures of them being on a beach and this and that. That took experiential travel to uh, a whole new field. So working from home might open other opportunities, right? You have Zoom. How will that change the behavior of a person while he's at home? What businesses does that generate? So what's happening right now? How does it change how a person functions? And you build on top of that.
Okay, so we have some questions. I'll read them out. First one is from Rohit Kumar. He's saying, if we have idea and tech team, then what is the other parameter to hunt a financier? I think an investor.
See, if you have an idea and a tech team, why don't you have a MVP? Is my first question. A minimum viable product, which is the basic skeleton of what do you want to build. Generally, investors would not go beyond they discuss the idea and the quality of the tech team. I don't think there is much more than that. And if by the time you've not been able to secure funding, if you can't show growth in the sense of over the last 1 month, where was your product, where is it now? So you'll have to constantly show how fast can you deliver. So if you have a tech team already, while you're looking for investors, how far has your product gone since you started looking for investors? Because the first question will be, when did you start work on this? How far have you come? And then they'll deep dive into an idea. Now, of course, the idea needs to make sense to them, which I don't know what is in this case. So, yeah.
Okay, Harsha is asking a question that he's saying that you talked about a challenge while working with a bundle project. That is how marketing to be done at a whole. How to face this challenge? How can one market a bundle project versus a
So usually what I've seen bundles do, which is also what Just Dial is looking to do, which is like, why do you need 10 apps? Right? Just Dial does that. A couple of others also do that. Okay, why do you need 10 apps? Just take this one. There was another company that Amazon recently acquired that did something similar. So that is how they usually end up going about it. Now, Amazon is a great example. That was an unbundled company where it was just wanted to be the world's biggest bookstore and slowly started bundling and became the biggest store altogether. So for me, the best way to create a bundle is start with one thing, perfect it, and then start building on top. Because as a startup, unless you have huge resources, you want focus. Focus in terms of product development, in terms of uh, whatever, in terms of where your tech should be focused, your product should be focused, your marketing should be focused. Once that picks up, you add another thing to it, which is also how Paytm went about its business. Started with one thing, added on top. So yeah, for me, that will work better.
So when we talk about focus, we also realize that if you focus very narrowly, then you might miss out the adjacent opportunities. So what would be what in your experience is the way to determine how much to focus and how much to diversify? What would be the way to handle that?
Early stage startups need to be very sure of what problems are they looking to solve. Right. When I say focus, I'm not saying like do one thing. You are basically focused on one problem and how do you solve it. Now that becomes a how problem worth solving. Is there a market for the problem? sometimes what happens is you solve a problem and then look for you create a solution and then look for a problem.
Right.
मैंने ये कर
Put it
दिया
that
है,
way.
हाँ, rather than के is there a problem and there is a problem and I want to solve for it. So that is a big issue. Actually, a lot of founders talk about it. Okay, one of the successful founders who failed in the past, they say, okay, I was solving for a problem that doesn't exist. So if it's a big enough problem, just if you focus on that problem, that is what I mean by focus. Okay, don't try and solve multiple problems when you're early.
Right. I think that makes sense. Focus on the problem versus anything else. And
You need to make sure it's a viable enough problem and it is actually a problem that people are ready to pay for.
we have one more question from Amit Mittal. He's saying, thanks for sharing such insightful ideas. We are into digital KYC space and would like to explore if we can synergize with FanFi team on AML compliance. We are already working with some of the biggest names in fantasy gaming. I would really appreciate if we can connect some time over the same. So Amit wants to connect with you and see if we can work along with you.
Mm.
So Amit, we'll be happy to share Akhil's contact details with you. Kindly put in your on the chat. You can put in your email ID and phone number, and we will connect with you. And we'll share Akhil's contact details. Sushma Yadav, who's saying, what is easy to chase, fund or the team in the startup journey? I know a couple of students whose team disintegrated in the early stage itself.
Yeah, your initial team is the most crucial thing in the world for a startup. You can get your funds later. You can't change your founders later. It's becomes very, very complicated. So it's like having a co-founder is like getting married, right? And the divorce is actually messier than in actual life in some cases. So I don't have the right answer to you. How do I find that team? But your initial team is the most crucial part of your company. I was lucky. My co-founder was born in my family. He's my younger brother. So, but yeah, that more than funds. Funds you can raise later. You can't change your team later. It's very important that you and that's why college is important, because the relationships, as I said, that you form during your bachelor's last a lifetime. And you spend 4 years in a hostel with those people, you know them inside out, whether you click, you don't click, what works, what doesn't. Do you share a similar vision for the future? You don't. So that is a very, very good time.
Yeah, but then another thing, we just discovered that it's actually Dr. Surya Prakash who has asked this question. But he's also mentioned that that he's seen a couple of students teams which have disintegrated in early stage itself. So I think his dilemma is, if teams are important, how do you ensure that the teams don't disintegrate? What is the right way to look for co-founders?
Usually early stage disintegration happens mostly when there's a conflict of vision. And so one thing is, does everyone buy into the idea? Because otherwise someone just thinks, I have a better idea that I'll follow. And as I said, as an entrepreneur, get an idea every day, but you have to stick to an idea for at least 4 or 5 years if you have to take it anywhere. If you're so that is why having a common vision towards that idea, that this is a great idea worth pursuing for 2 years, becomes very important. The other big thing is, sometimes people tend to people don't understand that 1% of a million is better than 100% of nothing. There are those things, if it grows too big, you've not even started, but if it grows too big, he has this much, I have this much, I'll start something of my own, stuff like that. Which is something people need to think amongst each other and stuff.
One of the things that when you were speaking, you spoke about that today it's not just about solving problems, but doing it more efficient. Does that mean that there are no more new problems left in the world?
No, so I was
Any
talking
solutions
about
already for the problem?
Tech people who want to get into entrepreneurship. For them, it's a good tech guy is not about solving the problem or writing code to make a website look a certain way, app behave a certain way, but can he solve it efficiently? Because in a startup, scale is the biggest challenge. So you'll have a lot of people who can write HTML, CSS, and bring it forward, but it'll crash the moment 1,000 people come onto your website. So, and again, for someone like a Google and Facebook, they have two basic places where they spend money: salaries and server costs. And that is why whenever Google interviews, the coding is around how efficiently are you solving that problem. Even if you look at HackerRank and stuff, what is the complexity of the code that you've written and how much resources is it going to drain. So for tech people, it is about how efficiently can you solve a problem rather than can you solve it. So that is what they should focus their efforts on. If you can build the website, can you build it in a way that it takes lesser resources, that it can handle more people, basically.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so we're coming to the end of this thing, and I would like to express our thanks on behalf of all the attendees and all the people from the BML Mundial University to Akhil for coming here onto this session and sharing such nice, interesting thoughts. And I think one thing that everybody can take back and certainly use after this talk, is the startup course available given by Y Combinator through Stanford. It's not very difficult to find online. You just have to type in free Y Combinator course at Stanford, and you will land on this thing.
It's on YouTube. You can search how to start. It's called How to Start a Startup, Y Combinator Stanford.
Right.
You'll get it very easily.
Thank you so much. And I would like to thank all the attendees for coming in today for the session and being participative in sharing so many thoughts and questions. Thank you so much, Akhil, for being here. And as an announcement, next week we're going to have Russell Longjam from Innovate, who would be talking about the startup. Thank you so much. Till we meet again on Friday, please keep safe and be in high spirits. Thank you, everybody. Have a great. Thank you, Akhil.
So, thank you. Thanks, everyone.